Welcome to the channel. In today's video, we are going to be changing out the front and rear sprockets as well as the chain on this BMW F700GS. So now using a 24mm socket, I'm just going to undo the rear axle nut. So then there's the rear axle, I should say the chain tensioner right here. So that's going to be a 13mm wrench. And this is the lock nut, so we'll just loosen that and then bring this forward, effectively just loosening the chain up. And then the same thing on the other side. So our rear wheel can be slid forward. Our little chain adjustment blocks can be removed on both sides. And our axle can be just pulled straight out, set down, and our chain disengaged from our sprocket, and then kind of the whole works just slid right out like that, and then just set off to the side. We will swap out our rear sprocket first. So the rear sprocket is just kind of splined into the rear rim. You just kind of have to wiggle it out, and it comes straight out like that. So now we can remove the rear sprocket from the drive here. So in order to do so, what we're going to do is use a 16mm wrench on the nut side, and then using a 16mm socket attached to an impact on the back side. After we've loosened up all of those, our sprocket will just relieve from our rear drive. And then comparing our new sprocket to our old sprocket, you can see how much the teeth have worn. So now there's no particular orientation for this sprocket, so you can just put it right on there. All the bolts are going to line up. And now with all those started, we can do it the same way as we took it apart. And then we can re-engage our sprocket under the wheel like that. So this chain does not have a typical style like clip master link. So I'm just going to use a little cutoff wheel attached to a Dremel and just zip this chain off. And then with our chain cut, we can literally just pull it on through. So now we're going to take the front sprocket guard off here. This is done with T25 and just... We can now remove our front sprocket. In order to remove the front sprocket, I'm just using a 17 on an impact. You just hit it a couple times with an impact, comes right off. You don't need to worry about putting the bike in gear. It usually comes off pretty easy. Sometimes this front sprocket is directional, so we're just going to kind of be mindful of how we remove it. Then we have our new sprocket. We'll put the deeper side facing inwards, just like the other one was that we took off. And then we'll replace this bolt, put it in gear, and then just torque it down. So now we can install our chain. So installing the chain, all I'm doing here, we're not going to really worry about the rear sprocket quite yet, but what I do is just run it all the way up, spin it around the front sprocket, and then run it back down. Can now get our rear wheel reinstalled, and so got that done. I'm just going to set this in place, put the washer and our nut, not tightening it, but just getting it attached. Get our chain on our sprocket like that, and then we'll just slide our wheel forward and get our other portion of our chain aligned on our sprocket, and you can see that they meet up just like that with just enough room for our master link. This particular bike has a 116 link chain, and I purchased a 116 link chain. You can get a longer chain or a shorter chain or whatever you end up doing. You just have to cut, and it's just easier for me to just get the correct size chain. I don't have to change anything, and it just fits right up. So now this is a O-ring chain that I talked about. So what we do is we're going to put this chain lube on the master link, and then we're going to slide our O-rings on there, or sorry, this is a crimp-on style, like the more secure style master link opposed to the clip style. So we're going to put our chain lube on there with our O-rings. We're going to slide our master link through like that. And then we're going to put lube in there as well. Put our O-rings on, and then our plate. So this style chain, you're going to requires a tool to crimp these down, and I'll walk you through that process. So the first step in crimping our chain is with this tool. We are going to put it on our master link to press the links together. So what I did there is I pressed these links together. So now these pins that are kind of hollowed out are exposed or protruding a little bit. So now we're going to use the next part, and we're going to kind of mushroom these heads over. Okay, so what it is, we have more or less like a little anvil on one side that goes in there, and then this side has a pin that when we tighten this side up, it pushes this part through and just kind of mushrooms that over. So what we do is we're going to set this part here. We're going to rewind it, get it recessed in there, tighten up this inner one tight, and then tighten this down to mushroom it out. So put that on one side, tighten up this inner, tight up against the chain link there. I have a 14mm wrench. Just give that a snug, and then we're going to take this and tighten it down until we mushroom that over. And now reinstall our front sprocket here. Now we can start kind of tightening up our chain. Obviously we have absolute ton of slack there, so we're just going to use that same 13mm and adjust this bolt out until we're just going to eye it up at first. And just working around one side to the next, just trying to get it as equal as we can. You can see those little grooves in there. So there's, on the top, it's a groove, and then so first groove, second groove, third groove, and then you can see right there, I'm just barely at that fourth groove. So now on the other side, I'm at that, there's the first groove, second groove, third groove, and I'm just about an 1/8 inch beyond that fourth groove. So I'm going to set up the other side to be the same. And there's that spec right here, 30 to 40 millimeters of chain tension. So I will, to measure that, I'm just going to have a mic here, set it to 30 mil, and I'm going to push down, not with a ton of force, but just, I don't know, 10 pounds of force. Set it there, and just kind of, I mean, we're not building the piano here by any means, but just kind of setting that up. So I'm going to call that very close to 30 millimeters. So then as you see in here, I got it at that. There's a first notch, second notch, third notch, and I have it just beyond that fourth notch right there. And then on the other side, I have it on the same. The first notch, second notch, third notch, and then just beyond that fourth notch. You can then tighten the axle up here. So now with our axle tight, you can hold one side of the adjustment. I like to just put a little bit of tension on the adjustment block and then tighten up our lock nut. And our wheel rolls really smooth. Thank you very much for watching my video. Now, if this video helped you out in any way, please consider shopping from my parts website or giving me a super thanks. That's the kind of stuff that really keeps videos like this coming. And honestly, I do this stuff for you guys. So if you haven't already, please subscribe. Trying to hit 100,000. And as always, have a safe ride.